Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to be looking at the May-June 2023 Agriculture Science Single Award Paper 2 for CXC. And again, shout out to community members. You know who you are for linking this paper and the others so that we can go through them and share them with the community. So enough respect, big up yourself one time for doing that. So today we're going to jump into the May-June 2023 Paper 2 Single Award Agricultural Science for CXC. Alright, the first question we are looking at here, right? They're asking us about food security. So the first question is asking us about food security. So it said, define the term food and nutrition security, 3 marks. And if you jump to our textbook, we can have a textbook answer if you want. Food security means being self-sufficient in nutritious, good quality food. Alright, so as simple as that, being self-sufficient in nutritious and good quality food. That's food security. Put in another way, food security, food and nutrition security is having access to nutritious food at any given point in time. So having access, everybody having access to nutritious food at any time they want it. So when we say access, we're talking about people can afford, everybody can afford to buy nutritious food anytime they want that food. So all people having both physical and economic access to nutritious food at all times. So that's basically food and nutrition security. Part 2. Farmers on Paradise Island were destroyed by a hurricane. Farms on Paradise Island were destroyed by a hurricane in 2020. Residents had limited food supplies until some supplies were shipped from a neighboring island 1 month after the passage of the hurricane. The Prime Minister is concerned about food and nutrition security in the event of another hurricane. State 2 possible measures that can be implemented by the government of Paradise Island to address food and food security challenges affecting the country. So what can he do? So the government is in the ideal position to basically implement measures. So one, they can invest in agriculture. So government can actually invest in developing agriculture. So invest monies into new technologies, invest money into new planting techniques, teach workshops, teach farmers how to become more efficient, more sustainable. And so investment is one of the key areas in which the government can assist in food security. So investing in a variety of things, from machinery to in the education of the farmers. And of course, you want to put policies in place. Certain policies can be used to help to bolster food production. So it could be some trade policies, it could be water use policies so that they can give agriculture some of the water that they need. It can be a part of the trade policies, could be implementing certain trade standards that can help to protect, in a sense, the local market so that local farmers can produce enough food for the country to survive. These are some of the ways in which the government can help to address the food security issues in the country. The government can, of course, invest in proper infrastructure. Infrastructure includes roads, bridges, those kind of things, because you know some of the farms, they might not have access to good roads, and so that can help to deter people from farming, and help to ensure that the produce reach the market in a proper way. So you have to invest in the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, everything like that, to help to build out the overall sector of agriculture. So we have invest in, equipment, machinery, education in agriculture. We have invest in infrastructure. We have, of course, policies for trade, so they can either reduce trade barriers, so you can make importation of things like seeds a little easier, and of course they can put certain things in place that can enhance the local market. Of course, market access. They can help farmers reach greater markets, so that would encourage them to produce more. If all this stuff that is being purchased is imported produce, then farmers would not want to produce. But if you open up the market, give them access to even neighboring markets. So I produce something, you produce the other thing, we trade properly. That can help both nations. So market access is another way in which they can help to foster the sector. Of course, you have to pump money into the sector, right? You have to actually pump money into the sector. So financial assistance to farmers, subsidies to farmers to help them to reduce their cost of production so they can be competitive. And of course, you can invest in things like storage facilities, so that warehouses, so that when a hurricane comes next time, you have stocks and stocks of food, so that you don't have to wait a couple months. You have proper trailers, you have proper facilities, warehouse with food that can last a while, because there's some foods out there that can be kept without being in a fridge, because they have low respiration rate and they can last a long time. So all these are ways in which the government can help to foster or improve food and nutrition security. Of course, this is a long topic, and so there are a lot of answers for that one question. It might seem simple. B. The Ministry of Agriculture in your country recently stated that most farmers operate on lands that they do not own. The minister wants to improve the land tenure situation so the farmers can have access to government lands for farming. Advise the minister of 2 ways in which he can enable farmers to access government lands for farming. So, the minister can start with leasing, right? They can long lease to farmers. They can give them lease to the land that can last a long time, so that the farmers are comfortable in investing in those lands, knowing that they're not going to be taken away just down the road once they keep paying their lease, right? So low price leasing, that's one way in which they can enable farmers to access government land. How else can they enable farmers to access government land? Then, of course, one of the first steps you should take to is, of course, to map the lands and see which lands are best for production, and then allocate those lands to farming instead of other sectors like housing and other types of development, because sometimes in some countries lands go to various other sectors other than agriculture, and some of these lands are some of the best lands, some of the most fertile lands, and they go to other sectors. So the government needs to look at the lands and say, okay, pass laws, say these belongs to farming, and pass policies put in place to ensure that those lands are dedicated for farming. The government can also allow farmers to own land at a subsidized cost, because lands are expensive. And so what the government can do is subsidize the cost of land per square foot, so that farmers can pay a little bit more, less than residential or anything, to actually own land that belongs to the government. So they can sell them parcels of land if they want to, but at a subsidized rate. So it's cheaper for the farmer to acquire a large piece of land that they can actually do farm production on. And of course, you have to stipulate certain things, whether it is a lease or rental agreement, that farmers can't really install certain permanent structures, because if you're leasing a land, it doesn't belong to you. So whenever you're ready to come out of farming, you have to give up that land. So a lot of policies have to be put in place to ensure that they, not too much, because you want to give them access, so you don't want anything too steep, right? So we're talking land leasing and rental agreements. We're talking subsidized land ownership. We are talking land allocation for the sector, in terms of taking land and putting it just for the sector, good fertile lands for the sector. And of course now, laws and regulations have to be put in place to prevent squatting. So farmers can't go and just squat on somebody else's land. You need to put policies in place to show that you have to go through the proper processes to access this land. Because up there they said that the people just operating on land that they do not own, right? So some of them do squat. They might just go find a piece of land and go on it. That can't be. You have to be able to put policies in place that doesn't allow one farmer to infringe on the land of another farmer. So there are myriads of policies that can put in place to make land tenure a lot easier. And once farmers are confident that they can access the land, they are going to invest more in that land. Number 2, so there's 3 benefits that farmers can obtain by farming on larger tracts of land. So 3 benefits that farmers can obtain by farming on larger tracts of land. Of course, it gives them access to economies of scale, meaning they can increase their production levels with larger pieces of land, and that can lead to increase monies, increase earnings, because you're able to produce at a higher scale, so you can earn more. That's 1. 2, you can increase, when you increase your production, you can actually decrease the overall cost. That, again, part of economies of scale. So your overall cost of production can reduce because you're able to scale up to a larger level, so that you can spread the cost across the different levels of output. If you're farming on a larger piece of land, as a farmer now, you can have a different variety of goods. You can change up the variety of goods. So you might not have to just stick to one crop. You can plant large amounts of different crops. So you're able to diversify your offering as a farmer. You can even do mixed farming if you want to, right? You can even do mixed farming. You can do mixed vegetable farming. You can do vegetables and 3 crop farming, because you have the land to do that, right? So that's the next way. A next benefit is that mechanization can come into play, right? If sometimes it doesn't make sense to buy a tractor if you only have a small piece of land, but when you have a large piece of land, then you can implement mechanization that can lead to more efficiencies, more cost savings, and ultimately helps you to increase your output, and that would be beneficial to you economically as a farmer. So there are 3 benefits we have there. So we have 1 where they're able to plant more things. They're able to reduce costs because they can scale up, economies of scale. They can mechanize because the land allows for more mechanization. And ultimately, we're saying that they can benefit economically because larger piece of land means more production, and that could mean more output, more sales for the farmer. Right? So all those are benefits that the farmer can get if they have a larger piece of land. Other ways the farmer can benefit, of course, is risk management, because if you have a larger piece of land, you can plant more crops, different crops, and so let's say there's an outbreak of a disease for a particular species, then it will be contained just there. You have other plants to help you to make back that money that you might have lost with that other plant. So you have some financial and economical risk management right there, right? And of course, you can create more jobs, right? More jobs can be created, and because you have larger production, larger scale production, more jobs can be created. And you know, if you have a larger farm, that could be considered a larger business. And if you have a larger business, then banks now would say, okay, it's a large business, making more money, let me lend them some more money. So access to more financial capital might be greater if you have a larger production going on, as opposed if you have a little farm, the bank's managers playing with this farming thing. But you have a real large production, the bank can now give you more money because you have a larger business going on. Okay, next question. Number 2, state 3 principles of cooperatives. 3 principles of cooperatives. Okay, so what you have to realize is that cooperatives tends to be synonymous with agriculture. A lot of governments and agents, they promote cooperatives as it relates to agriculture, especially in marketing cooperatives, production cooperatives. So the textbook has it outlined nicely, cooperatives. So they ask us to do what? Just state, so it does listing. So 3 principles, we have open membership, joint ownership, democratic control, team management, patron members, non-profit business, service investment. So all these are some of the principles of the cooperatives. And you see it right here in this nice graphic right here. Democratic control, team management, patron members, non-profit business, service investment, open membership, joint ownership. Those are some of the principles of cooperatives. Next question asks us, The farmers in Green Valley cultivate a variety of vegetables and root crops for sale at the local market. The farmers complain that they are not making much profit as production costs are high and sales are low. They are also unable to obtain loans from banks. The farmers have been recently advised to form a cooperative, but they are concerned about the management problems that affect other cooperatives in the neighboring communities. So, state 2 types of cooperatives that that Green Valley farmers could consider establishing. So we have the marketing cooperative and the production cooperative. Those are the 2 types. So a marketing cooperative and a production cooperative. We can form those 2 to help with improving the sales and also reduce the cost of production. So right here in our textbook, we can see the types of cooperatives. We have produce, consumer, purchasing, processing, marketing, commodity, and service. Now for that cooperative, because they are complaining about high cost of production and then marketing issues, the best ones would be the marketing cooperative to come together and try to reduce price, and then of course production or producing cooperative to try to reduce the cost of production. Even the purchasing cooperative might be able to work so that you can group together, buy your stuff in bulk, and that would bring down some of the costs of production. So here are some benefits that Green Valley farmers can obtain from farming a cooperative. So this is Act for 3. We have a bunch in the book. So of course, if you farm a cooperative, you will have easier access to financing, because banks would rather lend money to a corporation, a cooperative, a business, than to lend to just small farmers. So coming together as a bigger entity can allow you to get greater access to financing. It could be loans, it could be grants, it could be soft loans, because a lot of institutions love to work with cooperatives to help them get them up to speed with their production, especially sustainable production and stuff like that. So one benefit is greater or easier access to capital, to funding. So look at this paragraph right here. Cooperatives helps its members reduce operating costs, that's 1. Increase their levels of production, that's 2. Therefore increase their income, that's 3. Right? Cooperatives challenge farmers to produce better quality produce and become more competitive. So it allows you to become more competitive, that's 4. And it helps reduce poverty because you're earning money. And so these are all some benefits to be gained from farming a cooperative. They can generate greater bargaining power for better prices and contracts, because imagine you go into a supermarket as one farmer. They can use one farmer against the other for pricing to reach the lowest price possible. But as a cooperative, you have more bargaining power because all y'all together, and so you can get better prices from the sellers, the buyers, sorry. And like I said before, they can attract more aid from the government and other institutions because they love to deal with larger groups, larger bodies. And so, at the bottom end of the day, one of the most important benefits, like they say here, is improve economic well-being of the members. And so there are a lot of different benefits right there. They generate collective ownership of everything. They can basically share the risk across all the members that comes along with agricultural practices. Of course, they can help to make each other better by teamwork. So one farmer might say, okay, this is now how you produce this is how you do it, so that they can help each other. So there are a lot of benefits from forming a cooperative. All right, next question. Suggest 2 management problems that can be experienced by cooperatives. Again, the book has a whole section on cooperatives you can jump into. So problems right here: limited capital, managerial inefficiency, business volume, membership issues, local competition, global issues. There are some problems. They just ask us to suggest 2. So we can break down some of them, right? For example, limited capital, meaning that management might have access to a small amount of money because you realize that maybe the group is relatively small. Some of these cooperatives, like credit unions and stuff, they benefit because they have a large a large membership. And so pull money from all of those people, pull it together, they have larger capital. But for some of these cooperatives, the access to capital might be a little restricted. Managerial inefficiency, meaning that maybe some of the farmers are not good at management per se, managing people, and they might not have the experience in running a cooperative or heading such an entity. And so you might have some managerial problems coming up because of the lack of experience from some of the leadership. The business volume, of course, that means that maybe there's not enough turnaround, there's not enough money being made by the cooperative because they don't have as much reach, and that can lead to some problems. Membership issues, a lot of farmers might want to be more individualistic, they might want to just do their own thing, and so you might have issues among the membership, or even to get members in the first place. A lot of farmers might get greedy, and so if you look at pricing, they might try to undercut each other, and so that could lead to also local competition because they might compete amongst themselves and undercut each other, and that could be a problem. So management of farmers cooperatives is shared responsibility between the chief executive officer and the board of directors and the patron members. Policies and regulations drawn up by the board and approved by the general membership are used for day-to-day running of the business of the cooperative. And so problems may sometimes arise for the management team, and that's the diagram right there showing the problems, and they have them outlined here. Limited capital. Cooperatives operate with limited amount of finance or capital which come from its patron members. As funds cannot be generated through public investment, the cooperatives may have to look for credit or ask patron members for more money to finance certain services. Business volume. The volume of business transaction changes as it depends on how often members use the service they have provided for themselves. High levels of business volume help a cooperative, so it's up to the members to take advantage of the services to make the cooperative worth it. Membership issues. In a cooperative, each member is a patron, a user, and an owner. Every member needs to demonstrate a sense of ownership, loyalty, and commitment. Members need to face up and share responsibility of supporting their cooperative, invest with their share contribution and business patronage. So help the cooperative grow. Local competition. Cooperatives also face local competition from local businesses, community, who feels that they are an economic threat to their clients and business. Large local businesses may buy in bulk and get discounts from merchant suppliers. When the local businesses sell their goods, they may offer lower prices than the cooperatives do. Members of the cooperatives need to focus on their effort on good management, greater production. Global issues such as globalization, trade liberalization, competitiveness, and quality standards affect farmers, cooperatives directly. Such issues may make it difficult for cooperatives to manage to meet the challenging task of international requirements and educate, train, and motivate their members. All right, that's the end of question 2 and section 1. Moving on to section 2. List 2 external conditions necessary for germination of the seed and one reason why each condition is important. So seed germination. So again, the book has it nicely tabled for us, right? 2 external conditions. The book has it nicely tabled for us, the conditions and their importance. So let's jump to the book. Don't make sense reinvent the wheel. So we have conditions for germination. Air containing oxygen. Oxygen is needed for respiration to release energy. The store of food in the seed is used to provide energy to make new cells and tissues. So that's the condition. Oxygen, importance to help the seed to carry out respiration and release energy so that it can release the store of food so that the seed can germinate and also make new cells. Then we have water or moisture. Water causes the seed to swell, splitting the tester and allowing the cells to take up water. Enzymes are activated so that starches are broken down to sugars, protein to amino acids, and lipids to more soluble substances. Food substances in solution are transported to the plumule and radicle where growth is taking place. So this is how important water is for germination in the seed. And then we have, of course, temperature, suitable temperature. Warm temperatures speed up enzyme activity and growth. Optimal temperature range for germination of most seed is between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. So we see the conditions and the importance, the water, the air, and this temperature, and why it is important, right? So of course you can utilize your textbook for these answers. All right, next one. On a recent visit to Karen's Plant Propagation Center, it was observed that all the tomato seedlings in the greenhouse were growing in a particular direction as seen in figure 1. So you see them here leaning hard. State the main reason for this observation and suggest 2 possible ways in which the issue can be avoided. Okay. And so to answer number 1, so in the textbook you have it right outlined there, phototropism. That's where the plants grow towards the light. And so you see them bending to get the light. Phototropism is plant growth in response to the direction of the light. If the tips of the plant shoots are exposed to light, they will bend and grow towards it. So that's phototropism right there taking place. So of course we're talking about a greenhouse. So we say that perhaps there isn't enough light that's entering the greenhouse, or the light is just in one area. So to avoid that, you can use a proper roofing for the greenhouse. Probably the roof material is too dark and the light is not penetrating enough, and so maybe the plant is striving to reach wherever little light you can find. So as it is a greenhouse, you have to look into the covering, the roof covering for that particular greenhouse, and make sure it is not preventing light from entering all around. That's one way to avoid the issue. So you need that uniform light exposure for the plants in that greenhouse. And if you take a look at the plants up here, look at this. Look at the plants. Look at how they are planted, right? Look at how they are planted. So spacing clearly is an issue, because look at this. These ones under here, they are going to be shadowed by the larger ones, right? So this planting system is not ideal. You need to space the plants properly so all of them can have proper access to light, because these ones are covering these ones. And so that's problematic. And so spacing is ideal. May have to thin out a bit to get all plants getting as much light as possible. And again, depending on the setup in the greenhouse, one way to avoid it is to, of course, rotate the plants. Make sure that they are not just there in one direction. So if you have certain beds, you can either rotate the plant or the light. I would go with the light. So make sure the light can be rotated. The light source can be rotated. You know, there are some plants that they grow under UV rays and stuff like that. So ensure that they can be rotated so that plants have access to the light from all sort of directions. Okay, next question. Figure 2 shows the ingredients in a brand of fertilizer: nitrogen, phosphate, potassium, 8%, 0%, and 24%. Nutrients derived from ammonium sulfate, triple superphosphate, and potash. Identify the major nutrient that is lacking in this fertilizer. Lacking, of course, would be phosphorus. They say 0%. 0% really of phosphorus? So phosphorus is the one lacking in this particular nitrogen. Look at this, 0% phosphate. Number 2, farmer Tony used this fertilizer alone on his lettuce crop. What effect would this fertilizer have on his crop? Give one reason for your answer. So if you're looking at this fertilizer, check this fertilizer. So it is nitrogen 8%, phosphate 0%, potassium 24%. This is not a good fertilizer for a lettuce crop, because we know that for leafy vegetables in particular, nitrogen is essential for leafy development, and phosphorus is essential for root development. So these lettuce plants are going to have poor leaf development, and lettuce is a leafy crop, and the reason why they have poor leaf development is because the amount of nitrogen required is too low, and then they're not going to have any good root development because phosphate is lacking, and phosphate is one key component for root development. and so they'll be deficient in nitrogen for a leafy crop, because leafy crops need nitrogen to make them nice and fluffy and lush. And so the heads of lettuce would be smaller and they would develop poorly. They might even get growth might even stunted because of the lack of nitrogen, and also because of the lack of proper root development, because there's no phosphorus really in that formulation. And so you'll see a lot of yellowing of the leaves, especially with these leafy crops, because they lack nitrogen, and ain't nobody want no yellow lettuce on the plate. So that's the effect you'll have on a crop like lettuce with that formulation. Poor stunted development because no proper root development and no proper leaf development. They're going to be yellow and not as lush and as big as they should be. Alright, so that's it for that question. Number 4, on a recent trip to Mary's vegetable farm, it was observed that most of the cabbage plots were overgrown with weeds. Define the term weed. So a weed is any plant growing where it is not desirable. Any plant growing where they are not wanted. So in our textbook we have, a weed is any plant that is growing in the wrong place or where it is not wanted. Full stop. Next question. List 3 harmful effects of weeds on crop production. And of course we know them off the top of our head, because weeds compete for water, weed competes for light, competes for nutrients. Weed also helps to spread diseases along towards the plants, so they might be infested and then they spread that to the crops. Of course, the weed also competes with the plants for spacing. So all those are some of the disadvantages of harmful effects of weeds on crop production. And of course, if you're feeding your animals, they might eat the wrong weed and they might get poisoned also. So here we go. Weeds compete with crop plants for space in which to grow and for light, water, and nutrients. If weed growth in a crop is heavy, then crop plants are deprived of their required nutrients, and the yield and quality will suffer. So the yield will suffer and the quality will suffer. Weeds can also contaminate the crops produced with their seeds and fruits. Some weed species can act as hosts for pests such as aphids and disease-causing organisms. If weeds in a crop becomes infected, then these disease-causing organisms can infect the crop plant and cause damage. So those are some of the harmful effects of weeds on crop production. So let's say there's still lists. So your list: competition for light, competition for nutrients, competition for spacing. We're looking at, of course, spreading diseases, and of course reduce the overall yield of your crops. Benefits. Despite the negative impact of weeds, some plants are usually considered as weeds may actually provide some benefit during crop production. State one beneficial attribute of weeds in agriculture. So one benefit of weeds, of course, they have flowers, so they can stimulate pollination, right? They can stimulate pollination. Also, some weeds can act as a deterrent for certain insects, certain pests, right? They can act as a way to prevent them from infecting your crops, right? They can act as a repellent for certain crops, for certain disease against the crops. Some weeds can actually help to act as ground cover to prevent some of the soil from washing away. So those are some benefits you can derive from some weeds. So let's see what the book has. They have some benefits, possible benefits of weeds. In general, weeds are harmful, but their rapid germination and growth on bare soil provides a cover for vegetation that can help prevent soil erosion due to heavy rain. In some cropping system, fields can be left without a crop following for a growing season, and the weeds can be plowed back into the land to try to add some green manure, right? Some green organic matter. Weeds can attract beneficial insects such as bees, as stated, and insects that prey on crops. So they can stave off insects that might go on the crops, that might go on the weeds instead. So those are some benefits that you can get from weeds. Next question. Farmer Mary wants to plant a plot of tomatoes during the rainy season. The extension officer visits her farm and advises her that the plants must be properly supported. So there's 2 reasons why it is important for Farmer Mary to properly support her tomato plants. Okay, so for this one, of course, we're talking about staking the plants. So where would we stake? Okay, so there are multiple reasons. One, especially during this time, one, it can prevent the spread of fungus, and even it can prevent the fungus in general, because staking allows for more air to be circulated in the plants. They're upright so they can get more air, so they can have proper ventilation to prevent certain diseases from gathering. Also, staking allows for the fruit, the tree, to hold up the weight of the fruit, so that the tree doesn't buckle under the pressure of the fruit, and then you lose the fruit when it touches the ground and becomes contaminated or bruised or something like that. So staking would help to support the fruit during the fruiting development period. Alright, so if you look in our textbook, staking supports the plant with weak stems, enable the plant to grow upright, keeps the fruit high above the ground away from soil contamination, makes pruning, weeds, tillage, and harvesting more convenient. So staking and supporting the plant is a must, especially during the rainy period, where it will be more susceptible to certain diseases like mildew and fungus, and staking helps to, again, create that ventilation, right? And also supporting the plant, the weight, the stake, the stem, everything. All right, next question. Advise Farmer Mary of 2 cultural practices that she can adapt to ensure that the tomato plants are properly supported. I guess we did it. We answered it up there, but 2 would be staking and molding. Staking and molding, because staking again supports the stem, right? And when the plants start fruiting, it helps to keep the fruit above the ground. And then molding now is molding covers the root of the plant, aerates the soil, creates room for root development, so the root can grow. And of course, this part here gives support and keeps the plant upright. So that's one of the big ways to support the plant, molding, because it keeps the plant upright. Molding is where you scrape the soil up around the base of the plant. So the plant is staked and you mold around it. So you have support for the stem and the fruit, and you have support for the root system right there with molding. So those are the 2 main cultural practices that can be used to physically and properly support the tomato plants. Okay, the next question. A fast food restaurant in town recently advised that it was looking to purchase very large tomatoes for slicing. So there's one other cultural practice that will ensure that tomato plants produce fewer but very large tomato fruits. And of course, the answer for that one is, of course, you have to practice pruning, right? Pruning, because pruning improves the shape of the plant, encourage growth and development of fewer but larger fruits, and enable air to circulate more freely in the crop to discourage fungal disease and prevent the spread of diseases. Of course, so pruning is that key cultural practice that can get fewer but large fruits, because when you take off some of the leaves, some of the energy that would have gone into producing leaves is now directed to producing a larger fruit. All right, section 3, question 5. So we're looking at, let's see, animals now. So feed is often a major expense in rearing livestock in the Caribbean. The feed conversion ratio, FCR, is one of the indicators that can be used to determine efficiency or levels of performance obtained from feed. Explain the term feed conversion ratio. So if you look here in our textbook, we have feed conversion ratio, or FCR, is the number of units of feed measured in kilograms that the animal needs to produce one unit increase in its body weight, also measured in kilograms. it is expressed, for example, as a ratio, like 3 to 1 or 2.5 to 1. That is, 3 kilograms of feed or 2.5 kilograms of feed is needed to produce a 1 kilogram increase in body weight. So, to simplify that, put it in layman terms, feed conversion ratio is about how much feed it takes for an animal to put on 1 unit of body weight. Like 1 pound, 1 kilogram. How much feed it takes for the animal to put on that extra 1 pound or that extra 1 kilogram. That's the feed conversion ratio in a nutshell. So just one reason why the feed conversion ratio is important in livestock farming. Like the opening part say here, right? It's an indicator that can be used to determine efficiency and levels of performance. So we are saying that feed conversion ratio allows the farmer to understand how much feed it takes to gain a certain level of body mass, which means you don't have to overfeed the animals. Once you know the feed conversion ratio, you can save money because look here, hear what is up here, right? Feed is a major expense in rearing livestock, so you want to be sure that I am not feeding them too much and not giving me the proper return. So the feed conversion ratio allows you to see exactly how much feed I should give the animals to get whatever returns I'm looking for, because feed is expensive and I want to budget properly and not waste my money. So if we dig through the textbook here, the importance of FCR. Feed is a major expense when rearing livestock, especially meat producing animals. An understanding of the FCR can be helpful in selecting classes and breeds of animals that have a low FCR. So that's the importance right there. It allows the farmer to say, okay, which animals should I use? Should I use for my operation? I will get one with a good FCR, a low FCR, because I want to be spending too much money and getting low returns. Next one, identifying particular animals that are efficient feed converters. So knowing the FCR allows the farmer to know which animals are good converters of food to body mass. So I can invest in those and not the greedy animals that eat, and they ain't really giving me good returns. Raising early maturing farm animals, thereby controlling expenditure on the feed. So you need animals that would reach their optimal weight faster than others. So you got to keep feeding them and they ain't reach a certain level yet. Then marketing batches of mature animals promptly before the FCR increases. This prevents spending on more feed at a time when increase in body weight is slowing down. So the FCR tells us, because as the animals mature, sometimes the feed conversion ratio gets higher and higher, because the older you get, the harder it is to turn that food into body mass. And so you don't want to, so you have to know when to send them to market so that they don't stay there and use up all the money on feed. So those are some reasons why it's important to livestock farmers. The bottom line is money, because it's expensive. Feed is expensive, so you don't want to waste it. Then we have Sunita recently purchased a flock of 500 broiler birds for her poultry farm. Each bird weighed 0.1 kilograms and grew the bird until they attained the average weight of 3 kilograms. Overall, she fed them 4,500 kilograms of feed. Calculate the feed conversion ratio of the flock of broilers reared by Sunita. Show steps in your calculation. Okay, let's get that done. So this question has multiple parts. Let's break it down. Okay, so if you're looking at the different numbers here, we have 500 for the number of birds, we have 0.1 kilograms, and we have 3 kilograms and 4,500 kilograms. So we said that it attained an average weight of 3 kilograms, but that's not from 0, that's from 0.1. So the average weight would be the 3 kilograms minus the 0.1, so that's what? 2.9. So that's 2.9 kilograms per bird. So let's run through it really quick again. So total weight gain. First, find the total weight gain by the birds. So you multiply the number of birds by the difference between their average final weight and initial weight. So initial weight was 0.1 kilograms, and the difference between 0.1 kilograms and 3 kilograms would be about 2.9 kilograms, right? 2.9 kilograms. So then you multiply the 2.9 by the 500. When you do that, you get 1450. Then after you get the 1450, you divide the total feed consumed by the total weight gained by the bird. So total feed consumed over total weight gained. So total feed 4500 divided by the 1450, and we get 3.10, right? 3.10. So therefore the feed conversion ratio for the flock is approximately 3.10. This means that for every 3.1 kilogram of feed consumed, the birds gain 1 kilogram of body weight on average. A lower FCR indicates a more efficient conversion rate for the weight gain. So even if you don't want to be too technical, we can just say it's 3 to 1, right? 3 to 1 is the answer. So you can just round it off to 3 to 1, and that's the feed conversion. All right. So even if you don't do the part, if you don't put the step about minusing the 0.1 from the 3, if you just go with 3 alone, you'll get 1500. And if you divide the 1500, if you put the 4500 by the 1500, you'll get 3. And so that would still give you an average of 3 to 1 feed conversion ratio. Okay, next question. Farmer Ben observed that some of the layer birds in his flock are pecking the feathers, combs, and vent of each other. The one factor that is responsible for this behavior in layer birds is, well, it is cannibalism happening right there. We call it cannibalism. And what causes cannibalism? Of course, one factor might be there's too much birds right there. Too many birds in that pen. They are too close to each other. And of course, birds get hungry. You're not feeding the birds properly, Farmer Ben. And so if you're not feeding the birds properly, then they would end up start pecking at each other. But ultimately, what Farmer Ben wants to do also is debeak the birds, man. You have to debeak your birds, because when you don't debeak your birds, they can resort to cannibalism. It becomes more pronounced, because the beaks can do real damage to those birds. And so basically we answered number 1 and 2 in that question, because it's recommend 2 management practices that Farmer Ben can use to prevent this behavior from occurring among his flock. And we say debeak your birds, and also you might want to reduce the stocking density of the birds. And then they say here in the textbook, you can have small bundles of fresh herbage. So give them something to peck on. Give them some food to peck on. Feed them on time so that they don't get hungry. And all those practices would help to avoid the problem. So debeak them, feed them in time, and look at your stocking densities. See how much so much birds are in a given pen. Number 6, Farmer Joe obtained dairy cattle from the United States for his dairy farm in the Caribbean. However, he noticed that the animals were not productive as the animals on nearby dairy farms, and they seemed to be heat stressed. He was advised that the farmers nearby to use cattle developed by crossbreeding, especially adapted to the Caribbean region. Good. So explain the term crossbreeding. So crossbreeding is where you mix the genes of various animals. So you take one variety, one breed, and you mate it with another breed, and the offspring would be considered crossbred. So if we jump here to our textbook, crossbreeding occurs when an animal is mated with another animal of the same species but of a different breed. For example, a Hereford cattle may be mated with an Aberdeen Angus cattle to give offspring with an increased growth rate. Animals that are crossbred often show increased vigor and productivity. The genes from the two breeds are combined. Characteristics controlled by the dominant genes from both tend to be expressed. The offspring of crossbreeding are called hybrids. So outline 3 reasons why it is more beneficial for Farmer Joe to rear crossbred animals. And so we actually answered some of it above. Some of it is actually in the stem where they say they are heat stress. So one benefit for Farmer Joe is the animals would be more acclimated to the Caribbean weather, the Caribbean climate, and so they'll be able to adapt better to our Caribbean climate because they take the traits from animals that already adapted for here. And so they will last longer, produce better in this climate. That's one. And of course, we outlined a bunch right here where they can get the productive genes from one animal and then enhance overall productivity for an animal adapted to this climate. So right here in the book it says animals that are crossbred show increased vigor and they also show increased productivity because the genes are combined, the dominant genes from both breeds are combined. So the animals have more hybrid vigor and they show, and their productivity is increased. So if you're gonna distill it down, so they become more productive, crossbred, they become more resistant and resilient to the climate, and they have increased vigor when they are crossbred than the naturally born breeds. So hybrid vigor or heterosis. Crossbreeding involves mating animals with different breeds of the same species. It combines the genes of the two, resulting in offspring that have an increased heterozygous gene. So we're talking Spanish right now, but we'll understand. So hybrid offspring may be more fertile and have a longer lifespan than their parents. That's the hybrid vigor. The increased fitness of the hybrid generation is called hybrid vigor or heterosis. So they become better than their parents. Then of course we have disease resistance. So they are able to resist certain disease because you crossbreed those that might have the productive capacity but not disease resistance, and so they are healthier and they can produce at a higher level. And so apart from disease resistance, you also have improved production because of course you're going to take the good traits from one, match it with the next, and so you might have increase in maybe animal size, carcass size, increase in milk production, etc., etc. So all these are benefits of crossbreeding your animals. Next question. Identify one breed of dairy cattle developed by crossbreeding and adapted for the Caribbean region. So here we go. Good examples is development of the Jamaican Hope dairy cattle and the Jamaican breeds of beef cattle. So the Jamaican Hope dairy cattle that was developed in the Caribbean to adapt to the region. So that's the best example of a dairy cattle developed by crossbreeding for adoption in the Caribbean, the Jamaican Hope. So right there we see that the Jamaican Hope, the breed of cattle called the Jamaican Hope, was developed in the Caribbean by crossing the Zebu cattle from India with the Jersey cattle from Europe. This resulting breed is a good milk producer and is resistant to some diseases. Okay, next question. So they say, suggest one way in which crossbreeding differs from inbreeding. Crossbreeding differs from inbreeding. So crossbreeding is, so it's the same species, but different breeds. So that's crossbreeding, but different breeds, but not in the same family, right? Inbreeding is the same species, the same breed, same family. That's inbreeding. So if you have a animal lineage, we have a good stock. So you might breed the auntie and the nephew. I might be the father and the daughter, but it's in this inbreeding is in the same family tree. Mating within the same family tree. Crossbreeding is same species, different breed, different family tree. Alright, so inbreeding occurs when animals of the same breed are mated with one another. These animals will be closely related and genetically similar to one another. So that's a big difference right there. They are genetically related or they are the same family. Whereas crossbreeding is the same species but different breeds. Inbreeding occurs when animals of the same breed are mated and they normally are family, are closely genetically related. Okay, so that's it for the May-June 2023, August in that instance, Agriculture Science Single Award Paper 2 for CSEC. Alright, so that's it for that paper. Of course, you have other papers on the channel, so like, subscribe, hit the bell to know when Learn SKN drops another one.